Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the one and only Nick Lavezzo. All right. How's it going, Nick?
Pretty good.
Actually, Nick, thank you for making out here. I've had you guys on our radar screen for quite some time. And when I heard, FoundationDB being fun, I mean, actually, I met you at a tech cocktail event.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Probably like 3 years ago, right? And this was before you guys.
More than that. Yeah.
Okay.
We were.
Yeah,
and it's really.
It's really awesome to see you guys like mature and then finally get, your recent funding of 22 million. And it's amazing how much you guys have progressed. So let's just start with you. We always like to start our fireside chat.
All right. Where's the fire, by the way?
Yeah. Yeah, there'll be a fire code, danger there. But if you can first start out, where you were born, where you're raised, what did your parents do? Perhaps maybe if you had an entrepreneur experience as a child. Let's start with you.
Sure. So I was born in Cleveland, Ohio, but stayed there for approximately 5 months or something, and then moved to the DC area. My parents moved me here. So grew up here pretty much my whole life. I spent 4 or 5 years in Baltimore, actually. My mom was an awesome stay-at-home mom. My dad was a partner with Ernst & Young accounting firm, so he was a CPA. And an early entrepreneurial experience. Actually, with my current co-founder, a guy named Dave Scherer, we did a lot of entrepreneurial ventures as first graders and second graders.
Like what?
So we came to the conclusion that sodas were not sugary enough. And that you could make them more sugary by heating them up in the microwave and then adding sugar into them to dissolve more sugar. So we did this for ourselves. We thought this was amazing, delicious stuff. And so we loaded up a wagon, little whatever wagon full of jars of these concoctions that we'd made and took it around our neighborhood to try and sell it. And people were horrified. And then eventually it got attacked by bees and we got driven away, and that was how our first business ended.
Did you make any money though? No?
I have no idea.
So let's go like fast forward to this company before you did FoundationDB. I want to talk about this company, Visual Sciences.
Visual
Sciences. What was it, right? Because this is actually your first win, right? I mean, with the 2 days of your other co-founders.
Yeah.
By the way, Dave is the other CEO. Did he deliver a baby? I wasn't sure. That's why we didn't.
Yeah, they had their second child,
okay.
A week ago.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, but basically, like you had co-founded a company, Visual Sciences.
I wasn't a co-founder.
It was earlier. Sorry, okay, no problem. Yeah. So what was it? And then tell us the whole steps to like when you eventually sold it, the company for $60 million in 2006, and then eventually to Omniture, and then eventually to Adobe for a lot more than that. So let's just go through that whole thing. What is it first? And let's start with that.
So Visual Sciences was and currently still is, although it's called something, they change the name like every year, so I don't know. But it was a high-performance data visualization software platform that allowed Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, et cetera, with billions of records of data that they needed to do ad hoc, like real-time analytics on to do that. Our primary focus for the platform was web analytics, and there weren't that many great tools out there for that at that point. So that's basically what Visual Sciences was. And we're sort of we owned the top tier of the market.
Yeah, actually. So, is it true that even this tool that you guys built a long time ago, it's still rated at Gartner as one of the most advanced web analytics tool?
Yeah, I think Adobe? It's still the most. So it's part of the Adobe Analytics Suite or something, whatever they're calling it now. But it's rated by Gartner still as the top, the most powerful for web analytics.
And so this is a good segue into now with the the foundation of FoundationDB.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys had a very strong, like, technical background to build. I mean, what Gartner is considering is the most advanced web analytics tool out there.
Yeah.
And so, like, let's talk about that. Like, you're in visual sciences, and you're selling it. I mean, you sold it to Adobe, and then why did you guys decide to do another startup? Right.
Yeah.
So this is now sort of
Sure.
the birth of Foundation. Like, let's go through that whole process. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so we ended up selling the company in Visual Sciences in 2006, and actually stayed on. We're running relatively as an independent unit for about a year and a half, and then our CEO was made the CEO of the company that bought us, actually, and we rebranded the company that bought us as actually Visual Sciences, and ran that company for a while, and then sold it to Omniture in 2008. And Omniture got acquired by Adobe in 2010 or something. So we basically started leaving the company after the Omniture acquisition, my co-founders and I, and took some time off. One of my co-founders got married. There were all sorts of stuff going on personally, and got back together maybe a year afterwards and said, hey, let's do something again. This is fun. We enjoy working together. And at that point, there were all of these. Doing a startup before, like in the early 2000s, was a lot harder, I think. There were a lot less tools available to get up and running, get your like MVP up and running. So we were looking around and looking at Twitter was this thing. It's like, this is a website. It's 140 characters, and like somehow it's worth $1 billion, And we had this idea to do some easy applications, and we could try a bunch of different ones, and every time we have an idea, just kick it out the door and see what sticks, and when something sticks, scale it up was our idea. But my two co-founders, being the hardcore CS guys that they are, MIT and CMU people, they were like, okay, well, we want to make sure that we build on a common stack so that our engineers can sort of move between projects easily. And so in picking that stack, there were all sorts of great new technologies available that weren't there before, like Amazon EC2. You can rent servers by the hour. That was like unheard of. Like, wow, we don't have to build a data center. That's amazing. High productivity languages, all these kinds of things. But when we looked at the data storage layer, we saw a compromise that you had to basically make at that point, which we didn't like. And that was basically, you could either choose to store your data in a single machine relational database like MySQL or Oracle or any of these sort of more traditional databases. But those databases are awesome at providing concurrency control and perfect data consistency. So when you have tens of thousands or millions of people interacting with the same data set at the same time, it takes some really complicated logic to make it so that people aren't sort of colliding with each other in ways that like cause the database to become inconsistent.
Yeah. So I mean, but before you guys get to that moment there, so I mean, was there sort of a aha moment about, hey, we got to get into the database industry?
Basically, we looked at the problem. We looked at this compromise as being having to be made, which was, so the other side of it was that there's NoSQL databases are these distributed across multiple machines. They're highly fault tolerant, built sort of for the modern world of cloud computing, but they didn't have data consistency guarantees on the same level that other ones did. And our aha moment was looking at that problem and saying, maybe the world doesn't need us to build some cute applications. Maybe the world needs us to build a database that's going to provide perfect data consistency combined with the highly fault tolerant and scalable design of these modern NoSQL databases. And that's what we set out to do. We knew it was really hard.
Okay, just a really quick survey here. How many people here are technical? Raise your hand. Okay, got it. So it's like maybe half the audience. So because I just want to, because if you get real technical, you're going to lose me. So
sure. Sorry.
So if you can explain to the audience, first of all, like, because this whole NoSQL versus relational databases. So relational databases like the Oracles, right? Those are the big, highly structured solutions database. Now, can you explain to them what is NoSQL and how are you guys different from NoSQL and some of the other databases like MongoDB out there? How you guys are differentiating yourself?
Yeah, so NoSQL databases is a very broad grouping of sort of modern databases that are not single machine relational databases. They generally take a single database and spread it, chunk it up into parts, spread it across multiple machines. And anytime you're spreading data across multiple machines, you have to build in the chance that machines are going to go down, the network is going to go down, memory is going to go bad, all that kind of stuff. So they're built to be scalable and fault tolerant. And they generally have simpler data models than relational, but I won't go into that. So that's what NoSQL databases are. The other common thing that defined them all was that they did not provide ACID transactions, which is the thing that allows perfect data consistency in a database. And basically, that is the missing piece that makes these databases, makes people choose single machine relational databases over these databases. If they had them, we said these would be the future, and that's what we wanted to build.
So if I put this in layman terms, there's 40 people in the room, and they want to pick something, and they want to do write, or they want to do something to this object.
Yeah.
The current technology right now is like, okay, you want to do something with this? We can, you can do something, but we can kind of guarantee or maybe not. But in your technology, it's like we can 100% guarantee a transaction. When there's 40 people at the same time trying to do something to this, right?
Yeah,
so
there will be a conflict, right? So
okay.
If you don't have ACID transactions, some basic things that can happen when your application reads something from a database, you don't know if it's actually up to date, right? If you don't have them. When you write something to a database as an application, you're not guaranteed that it's actually going to be there when somebody looks for it. So it's very difficult to design an application that's reliable under those circumstances. It's like, are you going to build your house like on like a sandy beach, or are you going to pour like a foundation? And that's honestly where we came up with the name FoundationDB.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be kind of surprised if financial companies try to use that technology. Like, hey, there's 1 cent in there, I think, right? I mean, using the technology out there.
Yeah, it's scary not knowing whether your data is going to, your rights are going to actually go through.
I want to make this a little bit more, because I wanted to cover the technical side. Now I want to sort of go into the business side. So, co-founders. How important is it to find the right co-founder in a company? And how important is it to have, with Visual Science, you guys had history together.
Yeah.
What is sort of your opinion when startups don't have work history with their current co-founders? What is sort of, how important is that?
So, I think having a good relationship with your co-founders is vital. I'm very blessed to have an awesome relationship with mine. We've been working together for a really long time. I think you have to really trust each other's skill level. You need to trust each other's motivations. You need to think that the other person has integrity, all of those kinds of things. And sorry.
Well, it's like, co-founders that don't have, like co-founder.
What do I think about, like, if you don't?
What do you think about those when they're just like, they just met and then now they're in a business together? They don't have a huge work history together.
Yeah, I think that you should definitely spend a lot of time doing due diligence on this person that you're potentially getting into a life-changing partnership with, right? You meet somebody at a bar, they're cool, they have an idea, you get together. Like, I think that, most people wouldn't meet somebody at a bar and then like go get married. You want to talk to people who they have done business with in the past. You want to, do the Google stalking thing, right? You want to check references. I think, this is, it's so important to have.
So we're, Aileen Lee of Cowboy Ventures had created a report, and she had talked about the patterns. What she did was she did 31 unicorns. And the unicorns in the Valley, it's the billion-dollar corporations. And she had found patterns, and especially with co-founders, she said most of them most of them had work history together, and over half were sort of like childhood friends.
Really?
And well,
that's good.
So in your case, you guys are childhood friends.
Yeah, we
right?
are. Yeah.
Maybe we might have a unicorn in here. So let's go move on here. Let's move on. Let's talk about like the prototyping for FoundationDB. Real difficult, right? I mean, like prototyping a database technology. Like, where do you even start? Like, where did you guys? How did you guys start with a prototype? Did you guys have an MVP and like, minimal viable product?
Yeah.
Did you guys have that, or did you? I mean, how does it even look like for a database company, right?
A minimum viable product for a database that's going to have, be scalable and fault tolerant and have ACID transactions is what I just said, right? That's it's going to take a long time, right? It's not very minimum. Actually, a lot of people thought when we started this company that this trade-off that I was talking about between consistency and scalability was a fundamental, like, provable thing that you couldn't have both. So when we set off to solve this thing, we knew that we were going to have to take untraditional approaches. So what we did, actually, we didn't really start writing a database for the first year. We built a bunch of tools. We actually made our own programming language based on C++. It adds some things to C++ that we needed for our to build our database. We built this really powerful testing infrastructure that would allow us to write this distributed database code and then do tons of randomized testing on it with simulating server failures, network failures, all these kinds of things, and then at the end of each test run, check to see whether consistency guarantees had been violated or not, and whether it had stayed up when it should have. So we built these tools really before we started building the database. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And now, I mean, I'm just it's like, so database company is just like really hard to do. But how would you? Did you get customer feedback? Like, how do you get customers to use like tools that's eventually trying to build this database? Like, did you have customers to test those, or like, I'm just trying to figure out like, how did you get your first customer, and how did you iterate on that?
Well, I will say we definitely did not have users for years. So I mean, building this product, for us, it was because we believed that data consistency was very important. The company name was FoundationDB. We wanted to make this rock solid, scalable, awesome thing, and the product itself is relatively simple in what it gives you, right? So we had talked to a lot of people. We'd gone out to the Valley and all this kind of stuff and said, if we could build a database with these properties, what would you guys think? And they were all like, I mean, if you could give me like a unicorn to ride around as well, I would like that. So we felt like if we could build it, there would be interest. So then we just really set out to building it. And then in terms of acquiring first customers, even while we were in the process of building it, we did a lot of content marketing to developers, to our who was eventually going to become our customers and our users. So we talked about what we were working on. We talked about the testing things that we were making. Lots of people thought we were crazy. Lots of people thought, oh, like, let's laugh at these guys. This is going to vaporware. It's never going to happen. Everyone knows this is impossible, And we knew that if in the end we did succeed at it, that would be pretty awesome, because people had been saying all along very publicly that we couldn't. So when we did, and we made it a downloadable thing on our website, it really made some waves. So yeah.
Actually, now you talked about community building, right? So did you guys work on community building to make awareness? Was this process done before raising money, or did you do it? We'll get to the fundraising here, but did you guys like strategize to, hey, let's sort of get the developers community behind us and show basically social proof?
Yeah.
Like, how did that work? I mean, did you have to do that first before going to raise money?
We didn't have to do it before. So initially we bootstrapped the company about $1 million for the first year and a half, and then I think it was basically between that point and raising a $5 million or $4.5 million angel round that we started talking about the product publicly. there's some websites like Hacker News. I'm sure some people here know what that is. It's run by Y Combinator. There's tons of engineers on there all the time. So we would write articles and blog posts and stuff and try to get to them to the top of Hacker News. We started interacting with people on Twitter, getting in sort of like epic database nerd Twitter battles and stuff, and building a bit of a reputation as like the contrarian people who were out there doing some weird thing and like we're probably going to fail. But yeah, we started building our brand, and we knew that if we were going to do this and we were going to be successful, we would have to be thought leaders in the database space. So we set out early to try to convince people that we were smart people.
So I don't know if you guys heard that. So they trended on Hacker News. I don't know how many readers do we have here for Hacker News? Raise your hand. Okay, Hacker News is basically the YC community, and I don't know. Y Combinator owns pretty much 85 of the deal flow out there. If you can trend on Hacker News like you did, you guys are going to be on the radar screen.
And then you get. I mean, our first time appearing on Hacker News. I don't know if it's still true, but at least up until a couple of months ago, it was our largest day ever in terms of web visits. So, it was just crazy.
So is there any ways to hack Hacker News? Like,
they try
techniques?
really, really hard to make sure that you can't. So I'm going to say no.
Really?
Basically, you want to make good content, right? That you think that software engineers, startup founders, people like everyone in this room is going to be interested in. It doesn't have to be a hardcore engineering thing. It can be some interesting observation you've made about data that you have access to. OkCupid, right? They do the dating site. Sometimes they do random like statistical studies on all the eccentricities of people on their site and post these things. That'll get on Hacker News. It doesn't have to be some super technical thing. Just
Hashtag startup grind at FoundationDB. Do you have a Twitter?
At FoundationDB.
At FoundationDB. Yeah. Do you have Nick Lavezzo?
At Lavezzo, but
Lavezzo.
I'm managing marketing for our company, and all the tweet energy that I have is through the FoundationDB tag. I have the personal one.
Sure. Okay. No problem. Use it. Yeah. But anybody who tweets the best tweet, we actually have 5 books from Peter Thiel. I mean, his publisher had reached out to us. We're going to give these away. So tweet away. Whoever has the best tweet, and Alyssa is going to tell us who the best tweet is. 5 books. So let's.
It's a great book, by the way.
Oh, it is. It is. We're still on the same vein of this Hacker News. Getting press. So getting press is very important. When's a good time to approach press as a startup? Like, do I need to have an MVP? Do I have to have customers? What is sort of the milestones that I have to accomplish as a startup in order for me to approach press?
I mean, obviously you can approach press whenever you want. They might not listen, right? So you want to be able to give them a story that their readers are going to be interested in, because that's what they care about, right? So just going up to the press and saying, my product exists, like, look at it, like that's not particularly compelling, right? If you so I think there are some times when you can definitely reach out to press regardless of where you are in your product cycle. If you have some like amazing technological breakthrough, reach out to certain types of press that are focused on highly technical people, right? That was our first story, was basically just about the tech. We had no customers, we had nothing. If you've gotten funding, especially if you've gotten funding from anybody that has a name, there's types of press out there that will cover that. That's all they do, so they cover that, funding. I think a really important thing is a way you can get press that you might not deserve is find a trend that's happening. I don't know, whatever it's, is it the Internet of Things now, or is it, there was some hacking thing that just happened, or whatever, I don't know, drones, right? Can you relate what you're doing to that and like provide some insightful commentary? Find out who's writing about those things and reach out to those people with your take on it, right? With your idea for a story or whatever, or get quoted as an expert in your field.
So for FoundationDB, tell us the steps. Like did you go after technical journalists
Yeah.
that follow databases.
Yeah.
Like, tell us like how to because the thing is about this about getting notice. It's really about getting notice to your core customer, right? And if they're reading about that, they're going to try you out, and then if they like you, they're gonna evangelize for you, right?
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
you have to sort of get that through, this is what I call the customer acquisition strategy, right? So for you guys, did you guys go after what's specific? Like, did you guys go after database journalists?
Yeah, believe it or not, there are database journalists out there. So they cover us. Every time we do a little release, they'll cover us, right? That's not hard. Talking about trends. We were very lucky that early in the company, big data was this sexy term that was sort of, everyone's like, I don't know what's big data. Like, what is big data, right? And we could talk to people about that. NoSQL was a new thing at that point that nobody really understood what it was, and we had a unique perspective on what it meant, what it was, what its implications were going to be for the future of application development. So we reached out to people with that were writing about those things, interested in those things. We also did some contributed articles, which is a really cool thing that you can do if you've gotten to a point where you have some credibility, and you can give an article to somebody that they can post for free, right?
Being a thought leader.
Being a thought leader, yeah. I mean, and you don't have to be some person on a pedestal to do that. We got contributed articles, years ago before we were really a big deal or whatever. Not that we are now, but.
So now this is, I would say, probably the next topic that we're going to talk about. It's probably the whole reason why most of us are here.
Okay.
But FoundationDB is actually, through the research that I did on their website, so basically getting a Ron Conway to invest in your company is a big deal. And for those who don't know who Ron Conway is, he's the reason why that you guys type in Google Google instead of Googol, right? Because he wrote it on the check the wrong way, right? So Ron and SV Angels, I'm really interested how that introduction, how that investment happened to you guys, because this is a big signal. This is a big win, I think, for DC Tech, when the West Coast investors are coming here to invest, whether it's one or two companies. There's only two companies, by the way, that they invested here. That's AdThis, which we're going to have as a guest, Human, Radford, and May, and then you guys.
Yeah, and it's actually Smart Things that just exited.
Oh, Smart Things. Okay, great. Yeah, so we had Smart Things too. We had Alex here too. So, so tell us exactly, okay, well, before we go to the SV Angel route, how did you guys get the first interest from the investors? So, Michael Walrath of Right Media, who's now acquired by Yahoo.
Yeah,
it's a big deal. He sold for $100 million, couple $100 million.
Like $800 million.
800, yeah, simple $800 million to Yahoo, and then Howard Lerman, big angel investor. So let's talk about that. How did those connections happen? There's people in the audience right now, man, how do you even do that? How do you get to these people? So let's talk tell us exactly how that happened.
I mean, it's really a matter of network, So our last company, being successful, actually we were funded only by angel investors in that company. We didn't raise any institutional money, which obviously made some of our old investors excited to invest in this company. So we knew that we had some momentum going into potential to do a large angel round. And yeah, so Howard Lerman, he's the CEO and co-founder of a company called Yext up in New York. They're a really hot company up there. I hear rumors that, people say they might IPO, So he's high school friends with my two co-founders. They went to TJ, Thomas Jefferson High School for technology around here. So he had seen Visual Sciences and seen how awesome that was. He knew them and how good, engineers they were. So he was just like, yeah, we're in, how much can we be in for?
And do you think that was a very important moment for FoundationDB when he invested? And when you had talk with did you have a hard time raising funds before? Would you try to pitch to angels? And you had a hard time?
So our network around here was not of existing investors from our previous company was not highly networked to the West at all. But we knew Howard, and Howard was in New York, and he was very networked into the West, right? So Howard invested. He made an introduction to Michael Walrath, who is a tech luminary out in New York, and who's also well connected out there. My co-founder Dave Rosenthal went to college to MIT with a guy named Sean, who actually made the introduction to David Lee at SV Angel, Ron Conway's fund, and basically got us the lunch. But we also had that social proof of they're investors in Yext, right? So they knew Howard, right? So I'm sure he called Howard and said, "What's the deal with these guys? Are they, should I talk to them?" So I think it's a lot of social proof and stuff.
It sounds like the network carried you guys. So what would be sort of the advice that you give to anyone here who wants to, I don't know, get access to like an SV Angel? Do they need to talk to a Nick here tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I think talk to people that know them. I mean, it's not just SV Angel necessarily. We love SV Angel. They've been really super helpful. But there's a ton of good seed and angel funds out there now that are also going to be very helpful. And you can't be many degrees of separation away from them if you are going to any startup events or anything like that.
So if there's a startup that's going to pitch you tonight as being the ambassador to,
I mean, I'm happy to make introductions. So it's like obviously there's a filter, right?
Sure, yeah. So what kind of filters do you think of? Like, hey, yeah, that guy is no, or no, hey, that gal or guy, yes. Like, what sort of signals what sort of requirements should we have to impress Nick here?
Wow. I think obviously some traction in whatever you're doing. As long as if it's not just an idea in your head.
What does it mean by traction though? So what
it depends on the company, right? I mean, if you're a hard tech company and you have like an early prototype that nobody's ever looked at, but you can show it off and it's awesome, then that's traction, right? You've done something meaningful. You're not just a guy in a room handing business cards out and saying like, I have a startup. If you are building some kind of a social thing, like hopefully there are some people in your social thing, because otherwise it's not very social, right? If it's a real thing and you can articulate why you think that this is actually potentially a revenue generating thing in the future, or a world changing idea, people love talking to people like that. If I get to introduce one of our investors to somebody who ends up being the next whatever big company, that's awesome for me, right? That's the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is introductions of good people to other good people is not like a favor, right? That's a privilege, So I think if you can make somebody feel like I got to tell my friend about this, that's when you're going to get the good introduction, right? If you twist somebody's arm into like, hey, can you intro me by email to somebody, like they're going to get that vibe. They're going to know that,
So it's almost like the coolness factor. Like, hey, check out this startup, and then like, wow, that's really amazing. You found them. It's like, yeah. I mean, that's sort of.
Yeah, I mean, people. That was one thing that we found that seemed a bit different out west than maybe here. Here it seemed like it was people protected connections a little more, whereas we went out west and talked to the founder of Angel List, who was a
Naval,
yeah. So he was a friend of a friend, and he instantly said, wow, you guys are awesome. You need to talk to this guy and this guy and this guy, one of the founders of PayPal. And we were out there on our first trip and we were talking to people that just like blew us away, that people had made introductions that fast. So but Naval didn't see that as some like painful thing that he was going to do for us. He thought, hey, like I can help my friends out.
It's a connector that's really helping the guy who's receiving. It's actually going to help him, right? Because he wants the great deal flow.
There's a filtering there, right? I mean, like obviously, like out there, you're not going to get introed if you don't impress the person. But if you really impress the person, then you're going to get introductions.
So this is a very important, I guess, lesson to learn from folks, from FoundationDB. But if you guys are looking for funding, try to, and this is actually a model that's not as secret. Actually, John Burke from True Ventures told us this. I was asking him questions like, "What do you think of Bitcoin?" "I don't know." "What do you think about all these other like drones?" And he's like, "I don't know." It's like, "Well, what do you know?" He's like, "Well, my founders tell me, they give me the signals and I invest." Founders of his fund. So founders of funds, they're folks like you. So that's what I want to sort of like. That's why I have Startup Grind. I have speakers like you to come out. So I want the audience to, especially if they have amazing startups,
yeah, absolutely,
to sort of like, hey, I have a startup. Do you think it's cool? And it could be signals there, and there could be some intros that you could be doing later. So.
Yeah, I mean, investors really care about deal flow. Like they want to be taking meetings with interesting people.
Right.
So,
right.
And if somebody's on the border of maybe interesting or not, like I think most good investors are going to take that meeting.
Sure. Okay. So Startup Grind, hashtag Startup Grind at FoundationDB. Keep on tweeting because there's 5 books waiting. I'll give you a book, by the way.
All right.
I'll give that one. Let's talk about the future of FoundationDB. So one of the things that I want to see is like another smart things.
That's good. I like that.
Smart things type of company, right? And I really truly believe that FoundationDB could be 5 times bigger than those guys. And they were number 2 in the Internet of Things. Do you guys see yourself as possibly the next unicorn coming out of DC?
I mean, that's what the goal is, right? I mean, we're building a really powerful infrastructural technology that's honestly it's been a long road to get here. We're 5 years into this project already, and we are excited about the future, changing the way that people develop applications, for modern distributed systems, right? Our sort of moral mission as a company has been, we want to free up software engineers, the best software engineers in the world who have been, with duct tape and baling wire putting together the back ends for things like Facebook and Twitter, free people like that up to do much more productive and fun and interesting things by letting them build on top of something like FoundationDB. So I think we hope to change the world in that way.
So you didn't really answer my question though. Are you going to be $1 billion corporation? Like,
I mean, I hope so.
Hope so. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's.
When is that going to happen? I mean,
you want a timeline of when that's going to happen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's like what, 7 years?
I mean, I don't know. I can't.
Okay. Well, so this is actually the other topic I love to talk about, and I always talk to all of our guests. This is a very amazing, or not amazing, but it's a topic that we really care about, which is DC tech. So why did you stay in DC? Like, you could have gone to New York, you could have gone to Silicon Valley, right? Because you're tech heavy. Why did you stay in DC? And what do you think about DC has to offer that New York or Silicon Valley can't?
Yeah. Well, to be honest, one of the main drivers of staying in DC was we had family here. We had our existing investor network here. We grew up here. If I wouldn't have stayed in DC, I wouldn't have met my lovely wife who's down there today. So that was really that was a big driver. And going out to the Bay Area, everyone said, "Oh, so when are you moving out here?" Right? You're doing a big infrastructure startup. You got to have the best engineers in the world. They're here. They're not anywhere else. So move. And we just said, no, we are going to try and do this here. Maybe we'd have to move, but like we're going to give it a shot here. And we ended up being like extremely surprised at how easy it was for us to find really good engineers here. There are people 10 miles or whatever from here that are working on problems of the scale that, very few companies in the world will ever even touch, right? All that stuff that Snowden revealed, right? Like, whatever you decide of morality or whatever, you got to imagine, agree that's impressive, right? From a technical perspective. Those people are probably around here,
So actually this is great, because I heard that DC it's comparable to Silicon Valley. There's Silicon Valley is number one. But they said that the pool of engineers here per capita is, so this is postgraduate and PhDs, is actually just as much, or if not more, than the Valley. So do you experience that with FoundationDB?
Absolutely. I mean, we've pulled entire teams out of government contractors. So these great engineers, in general, went to awesome schools, got a job after college with a government contractor, getting well paid, doing really cool stuff, but it's top secret stuff. They can't talk about it. They're not easy to find. They don't generally come to meetups, right? They don't generally aren't networking. I mean, they're hanging out with their friends, doing whatever they're going to do, or they've got their family. They're doing normal people stuff. They're not in the startup ecosystem. They're not even aware of what really startups mean.
So how did you find your engineers though? Tell us the secret. So we want to get to engineers just like the Valley.
Our first engineering hire happened on a company walk. So back when we were 3 people, my co-founders and I, we would take walks around the neighborhood and talk. And we ran into a guy in the neighborhood who was walking his kids around, and ended up chatting with him, and he ended up being a really great engineer at MITRE, and ended up hiring him. And then we hired a bunch of his friends at MITRE. We said, who's the smartest person there? Okay, we're bring them in. But they're on LinkedIn. It's not like they're not hiding. They're not actively hiding. They're just not actively trying to. They've got good jobs. But if you can show them something that excites them, and you can introduce them to the concept that they can have a share in the success of the company, because that's something they've never had before, right? And you have to also be able to pay them a reasonable salary, because they're probably used to getting a good salary where they are. And if you can do those things, a lot of them are going to be happy to jump, because they know that their job is going to be waiting for them if you fail, right? So I think talking to our friends in the Bay Area who are like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to hire out here. It must be hell for you guys. Actually, no, we've hired 25 awesome engineers. We're really happy. We've had 0 turnover. They're like, what are you talking about? That's impossible, So this is a great place to be hiring engineers, I think.
The thing is that this is one of the things that I feel that DC is sitting on a treasure trove of talent, of engineer prowess, right? And if there's ways where startups here can sort of unlock that and recruit these amazing engineers, I feel like there's going to be a lot more money coming into this area. Interest from the West Coast, because I feel like the West Coast doesn't give us enough respect, because it's what's DC, what's their startup? We got some really effing cool startups here, and they're supported by really amazing engineers.
Yep.
So if you can kind of tell us again these secrets of how we can get to these engineers like MITRE, I mean that's great, or NSA, or the DoD engineers. I mean my background is from the intelligence community, and there are some really amazing engineers.
Sure.
Amazing. So if you can kind of tell us again, if we can figure out how to unlock that talent pool here into our startups, I think we would be maybe not number 2, number 3. I mean, number 2, number 3 of startup communities.
I mean, definitely take walks around your neighborhood and look for engineers. No, I think honestly, this is something that we're trying to figure out now too, because obviously we're still hiring. We're trying to grow 100% a year, and that's a lot harder when you're not 3 people. So we have to have a lot of people, bring a lot of people in. But we reach out on LinkedIn. There are recruiters around here. I mean, I don't know if you are okay paying recruiter fees, but in general, they're not terrible. And they know these people, right? That's how, when Booz Allen wants to hire somebody, they find people that work at other government contractors. So there's ways to do it. It's just not it's not going out and like hanging out at bars. It's, jump on LinkedIn, look for people in your area that are working at a government contractor. They have a skill of, whatever, Ruby or whatever things you're looking for. Do a search. You can do these searches, upgrade your account, send them some LinkedIn in-mail. It's probably the first message they've ever gotten on LinkedIn. And, maybe they'll talk to you. So, that's what, we honestly do that. So.
Okay, great. I'm going to open up to Q&A. I'm sure you guys have a lot. Do we have any CityPass members here? Raise your hand if you have a question. Any question? All right, this is your last chance. All right, so anybody have a question for Nick? Anybody? Okay, here we go. Jeff.
Yeah, what are the chances that your technology will just be replicated by Microsoft or Oracle?
Yeah. So the question was, what are the chances our technology will be replicated by one of the large tech companies? Obviously, that is a possibility. In fact, actually, Google started working on. They realized that this problem was probably solvable, and that it was something that would be very useful to their engineers. So they set out to build something that was very similar to FoundationDB in terms of its guarantees about the same time we started our company. And they released a paper about it. It's called Google Spanner. They released it maybe 6 or 7 months ago. And we didn't say, oh crap, because up to that point, most people had thought that what we were doing was impossible. And that was our biggest sales hurdle, was telling people, convincing them that we weren't hiding skeletons in the closet. So showing them the existence proof that, okay, is Google lying? No, they're not. Okay, this is doable. Now the question is, have we done it? Now other large companies, I will say this problem is not something that you can hire a bunch of people and just tell them to do, right? You need, could you take a Mozart symphony, or I don't know if he did symphonies, whatever he did, could you take a piece of Mozart and just get a bunch of music grads, 1,000 music grads, and be like, write a new piece of Mozart? No, you need a new Mozart. You need 1 or 2 people working closely together on this very difficult problem. It's the surface area of the problem is not very big. It's just extremely hard. So I'm sure there are people working on it now, but we've been working on it for 5 years. So.
All right, next question.
Yeah, just wanted to know what you thought about MarkLogic, what they've done and how close it is.
Yeah, so MarkLogic has been around for a lot longer than us and other NoSQL databases. I think they were originally sort of an XML database, and I have to admit I'm not that familiar with what that was, but they have sort of rebranded themselves as a NoSQL database. They are one of the few NoSQL databases that actually can do ACID transactions in a distributed way. Now, my understanding is that they do it as sort of a second-class operation when it's cross-machine. Sorry for all the technical stuff, but basically they're not as fast. They're slower when they span multiple machines than they would be if they're co-located. So you need to be much more specific on how you're storing your data if you want it to be performant. With FoundationDB, there's no concept of any different tier of transactions. So.
Hey, I was wondering, can you profile some of your early adopter customers and kind of what data were they working with, and why did they feel the need to move to these distributed systems, reliable distributed systems?
Yeah. So our earliest customers, so when you're building a database, you need people to build applications on top of it, right? So that nobody can just adopt a database by clicking a button or giving you their email address. So our earliest customers were startups, right? Some of them just guys in basements, right? That are hoping to build the next big thing. But generally they were more sophisticated than your average person. Some of them were ex-Googlers and things like that. They knew the problems they would encounter when they started to scale, right? Or they knew that they wanted fault tolerance from the beginning. So if they built on a single machine relational database, which is sort of the normal thing to do, they would they knew that there was a technical debt there that they would have to be paying and paying and paying and paying as they scaled out. So they built on FoundationDB because from the beginning they understood that they would be ready for the party when it hopefully came. And then after sort of the first trickle of early people, it's people that are already at scale and are trying to manage it better and dealing with various different workloads that are.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. So one.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
2 quick questions. They'll be short. The first is in terms of distribution of the product. So, I mean, do the large-scale cloud providers use FoundationDB today for infrastructure as a service models? And if so, who are some of those providers today? If you could share that with us. And then the second one is differentiation between your product and MongoDB. What are some of the key differentials between the two?
Sure. So infrastructure as a service providers, generally people like Amazon, AWS, et cetera, they're providing data services that are proprietary to themselves. So for example, Amazon has Dynamo, right? Amazon does not provide you MongoDB itself. It's in the Amazon marketplace, right? Which is something now you can use MongoDB through Amazon. We are in the Amazon marketplace as well. We're in the Rackspace marketplace, all those kinds of things. So that's generally how they work, and it's a great distribution channel for us. We see tons of machine downloads happening from Amazon machine data centers and stuff like that. So the MongoDB question, we are different from MongoDB in a variety of ways. The sort of the most technically meaningful one is the fact that we provide ACID transactions that can span the entire database. So MongoDB, it's a document database. You can think of it as storing a bunch of documents in like a database. And if you want to do an operation on a single document, you can basically have it be consistent. But if you want to do an operation that involves multiple documents, there are no guarantees around database consistency. With FoundationDB, that limit is gone. So, yeah, and they're a document database. We're a key value store at our core, but you can do document stuff with FoundationDB pretty easily.
I think we have time for 1 more question.
Sure.
Good evening, Nick.
Hey.
Quick question for you. So for a person that has a startup, when does it make sense to raise angel money, and when does it make sense to raise venture money? And what type of advice do you get from the people that are the angel investors?
So I mean, I think you probably want to raise angel money as long as you can, to be honest. You're going to end up losing a lot less in terms of the ability to control the direction of your company. Somebody, I don't know who said that taking venture money is like strapping a rocket ship to your startup, right? Like it's going to go awesome if it's pointed in the right direction. But if it's like not pointed in the right direction, like it's going to be hard to change courses, right? So I think and in terms of how helpful they're going to be, if you have a friend, if your friend's dad or mom is a high-powered lawyer in DC and you're working on some startup that has nothing to do with law, but they think that they want to invest in startups, like probably they're not going to be very helpful in terms of advice, but they're also not going to be bothering you and like telling you like what's your strategy for this new random word that I heard. So it's a two-edged sword, I think, with people that are like tech savvy because they might be very involved. So, yeah.
Okay, so I have 2 more questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the first question is, if you could go back 10, 15 years, what would be the single most best advice you would have given yourself then?
So honestly, it probably would have been like relationship advice or something, but I think we're talking more business here. So I think I would tell myself, sort of give myself permission to do something that was outside of my area of expertise. So I graduated school with an accounting and finance degree. I felt very comfortable doing financial projections, all those kinds of things. And in visual sciences, I got forced sort of into a lot of new roles that you have sales and things that I'd never done before. And I in FoundationDB, I'm running marketing for our company right now. I've never done marketing at all before. But I said, okay, nobody else is going to do it. I'm the only one here. We're going to do it. And made a Twitter handle, right? Read The Thank You Economy by Gary Vaynerchuk, awesome book if you want to do social media stuff. Read a bunch of things, learned, tried things, learned as I went, and found out that, wow, like there's no magic here. Like you can do this, like I can do this. So I think I would have told myself to be open to the idea of becoming proficient in new things, even though I didn't feel like I was like qualified to do them. And I think that's actually really important if you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, because you're never going to be like, especially in the early stages, you're never going to have people on staff that know how to handle every little thing you're going to encounter, And if you try to hire those people too early, this is another thing I think we've learned and applied at FoundationDB. We've tried to do, if we hire somebody, we've tried to do their job before. So maybe we failed really bad at it, but we've tried it. So now we have a better way of communicating with them, a better way of evaluating how they're doing. So yeah.
Even janitorial service?
We don't have any janitors on staff,
got it.
actually.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last question would be, this is the most important question.
Whoa, okay.
So who's your favorite superhero or historic figure, and why?
Okay. Well, I'm a Christian, so Jesus would be the obvious and easy one, but I'll not do that. I am a huge history nerd. I read lots of military, historical fiction. And one character from the past that I think was just, amazing in a lot of ways, some of which are probably not good. Alexander the Great. He started out, you can think of him as like a startup founder, sort of, involving killing people. But he started out as a prince of a backwater colony in the backwater part of Greece. And before he was 30 years old, he had taken over the entire known world. He had toppled the largest empire that existed, was the Persians. Remember you've seen 300, the movie, the crazy guys, the bad guys? They were done. He took over Egypt, parts of India, and then he got poisoned and died. But I think having a conversation with him, like, what drove him to do this? Like, how did he, I'm sure he has some serious mental issues probably as well, but it would be interesting. So
Great.
Yep.
Well, thanks for coming out, Nick. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Lavezzo.
Thank you.